In one of our recent webinars, we were asked the question, what do you do when a student is reading significantly below grade level and you have all of these texts that are included in your curriculum? So the first thing I suggest is really looking at your standards. What is the standard asking of a student? Is the standard truly saying that the student must read that text? The student must read Macbeth. The student must read Romeo and Juliet. That usually isn't the case. But granted, we don't know everybody's standards. There might be one out there. The closest I could find to that when I looked up in Common Core was this standard here that says, by the end of the year, read and comprehend literature, including stories, dramas, and poetry, at the high end of the grades 2-3 text complexity band, independently and proficiently. So that was a third grade level standard. So while that is our goal, and we understand that's our goal, is to get students on grade level, realistically, they're not all there when they are sitting in front of you in class. So there are two different thoughts on this that I want to share with you. First is, when you're working on this standard, you just have to be realistic with yourself and with your students. The more you know about the language development continuum, the more you know about what the different language proficiency levels mean, what their assessment scores mean, and how you measure English language proficiency, the more empowered you'll feel to be able to select texts that are developmentally appropriate for the language level while moving students toward the grade level you're looking for in the end. We have to be realistic about where they are and build on what they have. That's the forgive yourself step one of the process. Now, for other standards where you're using text as a vehicle to accomplish another goal, such as this one here that I found, it's a 9th grade level standard, and it says, cite strong and thorough textual evidence to support analysis of what the text says explicitly, as well as inferences drawn from the text. So for something like this, where you're talking about inferencing, or you're citing evidence, or you're drawing conclusions, or discovering conflict, whatever the standard might be asking you to do, it doesn't say you have to read a 3rd grade level text in 3rd grade to do that. Okay, so give yourself a little bit of permission there to be creative. You can teach those standards with a variety of texts, and now I want to give you a number of supports that you can use with those texts. So here are my top suggestions for supporting students in reading and accomplishing language arts standards when they aren't quite ready for grade level texts just yet. So here we go. First suggestion: determine the key language needed to meet the standard and explicitly teach and model that language. So for example, if you are citing evidence, you want to explicitly teach students how to say, according to the author, on page 13 it states. You want to teach those structures and make sure you have them available for students to refer to and use while they're working on the standard. You want to use the student's strengths in listening to support reading. So usually, not in all students, but usually listening and speaking develop faster than the reading and writing. So use that listening strength that students have to support their reading by using read alouds and stopping frequently to discuss and clarify, or you might use audiobooks or record someone reading the book if that text is truly important for the students to feel included in the conversation. Then you can do a lot of different ways to use some audio support with that text. Any way you can make it visual. I worked in a classroom not long ago where the teacher was teaching Macbeth, and they were really talking about conflict. And we had the same conversation of how can you still teach conflict and have students know about Macbeth without having them need to read the whole thing, because it was really above their reading level at that point. And she used a lot of video. You can find videos to support texts. The students acted out certain portions. They used drama. The teacher rephrased. They'd watch a clip of the video, and then the teacher rephrased what the clip said in modern English to make sure students understood. When I taught Romeo and Juliet with 9th grade newcomers a few years back in a newcomer center, we made paper dolls of all the characters. They're 9th graders, and they loved the paper dolls. They decorated the characters, they dressed them, and we put magnets on them and put them on the board and moved them into the scene, moved them out of the scene, piled them up on the side when they were dying, and the kids really got into it because they could visualize the story. And anytime you can add in some pictures to give some support to your text is always helpful. If you can, depending on the titles you're using, you can use adapted texts, even getting the cliff notes, so it's a more simplified, shorter version of the same novel, graphic novels, or use just short excerpts. Do they really need to read the entire text to get the point of inferencing or character development? Maybe just short pieces, short key excerpts from the text. You could teach the same skills. Using interactive writing to create your own text is a great way to build literacy. Students are more comfortable in their listening and speaking first in most cases. So if they are speaking about a text, if they are speaking about a topic, and you use some interactive writing to record that together, then they will be able to read a text at a higher text complexity level because they've already done the thinking behind the text. So anytime you can use interactive writing and have students read their own work, the better. The most important thing, I think, for you to remember as you go is the balance. The balance between exposure to grade level text. It is crucial that students are exposed to grade level text. That's how they learn the literacy, and that's how they learn the language. But also balance that with text and supports that allow students to read and work independently when analyzing or discussing a text. So they can be two different, well thought out pieces of your lesson plan. Grade level exposure versus independent, really getting to the meat of the standard in whatever ways necessary, supported with different kinds of texts. So there are my thoughts on helping students who are reading below grade level. I hope those were helpful to you, and go ahead and download the handout with the notes, and you can share with your colleagues in your school to get the information out there.